Okay, a few thoughts on presentation skills. Again, can we do it justice in 10 minutes? Well, ideally you'd come on a course and we'd look at your mannerisms and we'd practice and do some and things. But if I had to pick out my sort of top 10 points in a few minutes, I think, first of all, I would say decide on your one central message. What is it that you are trying to say to these people at this presentation? If you don't know what the key message is, if you're just going to talk to them about something, then that's not enough, because if it isn't clear in your mind, it won't be clear in theirs when they walk away, and it's a waste of time. So what's your one central message? From that you can plan the presentation. You can draw a mind map and think about the different areas and how you're going to make the point, and everything can keep feeding back to the one message that you keep saying as you go through your presentation. Really hammer it home. When you first start, I think you should be standing up, even in a meeting. If somebody asks you to give just a rundown for a few minutes about progress on something, ideally you'd stand up. Using some sort of visual aid like a whiteboard or a flip chart is a good excuse to stand up. You'll find if you stand up, you've got more authority, but also your brain works better. The other sort of body language type thing is to make sure that you look smart. Wearing a suit or something like that, make sure you've got, that your hair is reasonably sorted, your shoes are shiny, all that sort of thing. Those sort of things are important. People don't believe someone who's scruffy. So I think that's important. Possibly you may not wear a suit in some situations, but you should always be, even if you're going to be in jeans and a t-shirt, make sure it's smart jeans and a t-shirt. Other body language things, eye contact for everybody. Make sure that you look around the room at each person. People in the back corners and front corners, don't miss anybody out. Don't talk continuously. You can leave pauses. I paused just now to see whether my little machine here is recording, but when I did, I bet it made you listen. In fact, I did it again then. People need something to look at. They need to have an agenda of some sort up there on the wall for them to see, and you need to talk them through the agenda so they know that there's a structure, that there are 3 main areas you're going to look at. And you need to signpost your progress. So you say, right, we've done the first part of the agenda, here we are going on to the second part. And this is so that people know where they are in the tunnel. Otherwise, they're in the tunnel, they don't know where the end is, it could go on forever, it's a horrible feeling. So agenda and signposting. When you first start, you need to be very well prepared. The most difficult part is the first minute. After that, you're on a roll. So you need to decide very carefully, what am I going to say in the first minute? Perhaps write down a script, prepare it, run through it, check you've really got it, have notes for it. And in your first minute, you need to say who you are, but you also need to say what's in it for them. In this talk, I'm going to show you X. Otherwise, why should they bother listening? So you need to hook them at the beginning with a what's in it for them. Possibly ask them a question in the first minute. That'll get their attention. And in fact, throughout your talk, you should be asking them questions. It should be interactive. I reckon even a talk to 200 people at a conference, you could at least ask them, could you put your hand up if you've had experience of this or know anything about X? Or could somebody give me an example of? And certainly with smaller groups, I think very important to be interactive. Just ask them if they know what you mean, if they've experienced it before. The reason for doing this is it keeps them awake. It also allows you to recalibrate yourself and check that the audience is on the right wavelength, that they understand it, that you're covering it at the right sort of pace, that sort of thing. And it gives you a moment to think while they're answering. So lots of reasons for being interactive, and I think that's very important. Similarly, make it as visual as you can, lots of diagrams and pictures rather than just words, and lots of examples rather than just principles and theories. In terms of what you should be using for your diagrams, I think you've got a choice. You could go for flip chart, overhead projector or PowerPoint. Flip chart's the most informal and the most flexible. It's the one I prefer, actually. Overhead projector can be a bit serious, although if the talk's done well and if it's to kind of 30 or 40 people, you're probably going to need an overhead projector. At least they're cheap and reliable and things, and you can still explain and give examples and be interactive around it. And then you've got PowerPoint, very flashy, very smooth, good for big audiences, but less interactive and takes a lot of setting up, and it's quite prone to failure, prone to breakdowns. If you are going to use PowerPoint, I strongly recommend having a spare disk of your presentation and perhaps even having overhead slides so that you can go back to that if you have to. Never be totally reliant on the technology because it will let you down. And finally, at the end of your presentation, it's important to think about how you're going to finish. This can be quite difficult. It needs to be summing up all the main points, or at least summing up what your number one message is. And it needs to end with a little bit of a flourish if you can, so that people are irresistibly drawn into breaking into applause. The example I use on my course is a guy who showed us how to iron a shirt on the presentation course. It was a 10-minute talk on ironing a shirt. And at the end he said, "And there you have it, the perfect shirt." And everybody you just had to clap. It was brilliant. So it's worth thinking about how you're going to finish, because you don't want to just sort of lamely trail off and say, well, there we are, and hope it hasn't been too boring, and well, that's it really. So there you are, presentations in 6 minutes.